Hi everyone, it's 2 o'clock and we brag about being on time. Please put your cell phones on whatever, air mode or something, or vibrate something else. Okay, so we will start and call the July 24th, 2023 Commission for the Las Vegas Centennial Board meeting to order. And I might add, Madam Clerk, are we in compliance with the open meeting law?
Yes, we are in compliance.
And may we do a roll call, please?
Yes. Chair Goodman?
I'm here.
Commissioner Bryan?
Here.
Commissioner Arnold? Commissioner Stodel?
Present.
Commissioner Brown? Commissioner Coffin?
Here.
Commissioner Helton? Commissioner Sanook? Commissioner Mowbray? Commissioner Truesdale?
Here.
Commissioner Brandenburg?
Here.
Commissioner Creer? Commissioner Mills?
Present.
Commissioner Prado?
Here.
Commissioner Diaz? Thank you. We do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. So on we go. Item 3, public comment. Public comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters on the agenda for action. If you wish to be heard, please give your name for the record, and the amount of discussion as well as the amount of time any single speaker is allowed may be limited. Our normal rush to the mic, we will close public comment and move on to agenda 4 for possible action to approve the final minutes by reference to the regular meeting, May 22nd, 2023. May I have a motion to approve?
A motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of May the 22nd, 2023.
And I'll second it.
Fine, we're still seconding, and all in favor, please signify by aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 5, report by the City of Las Vegas Finance Department staff regarding the Commission for the Las Vegas Centennial budget for the fiscal year 23. Hi.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. For the record,
And your
Kathy
name
Nye.
is?
Kathy Nye, for the record. And I will be presenting the financial information as of June 30th, 2023 for the Commission for the Centennial. So we have total revenues of $1.9 million and program expenditures of $1.4 million and general and administrative expenses of $197,000, which results in an increase in net assets of $316,000. So our net assets at the end of the year is $6.9 million.
Okay, I love your spreadsheet here.
Thank you.
And I see from that, we're always interested in how our commemorative license plates are doing.
Yeah, we're doing really good still.
And where are our Golden Knights? Back side. Okay. Oh, they're, well, of course, they won the Stanley Cup, so that's good, we're approved. Any comments, questions, please? And I see Mr. Commissioner Mowbray came, so you got him, good. Any questions? Okay, may I have a motion to approve, or don't we need to approve the budget? Just a report. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Move on to agenda Item 6, 230353 CLC1, final report by staff from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas Oral History Research Center regarding the completion of the Asian American and Pacific Islander AAPI Oral History Project funded by the Commission for the Las Vegas Centennial. Hi, good afternoon. Yes, and if you pull it down just a little bit so you can speak right into. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Stephanie Evans with the Oral History Research Center, and I'm with Clay T. White, who is the founding director, and Sarah Quigley, who is our Director of Special Collections at UNLV Libraries.
Beautiful. Good afternoon, ladies. Thank you.
I want to, first of all, thank you so much. With your $50,000 donation, we were able to start the Reflections, the Las Vegas Asian American and Pacific Islander Oral History Project. And we received your money, or we received the grant, the approval, on June 8th. By September, we had assembled a community advisory committee of 16 people. We had hired and trained 4 undergraduate students, and we had identified potential narrators and had begun to reach out to them to schedule interviews. We had our first interview on November 3rd, and that was with Angela Castro of the Regional Transportation Commission. We had our last official interview from your grant on May 18th, and that was the 3rd session with what the community calls Auntie Rosita Lee. We did in total 122 interview sessions of 129 narrators. And the reason the numbers are different is because sometimes, like with Auntie Rosita, we interviewed someone multiple times. On other occasions, we interviewed multiple people in one setting.
And excuse me, were these video and oral or just oral?
These were all audio only.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
After 2 face-to-face interviews, and you'll remember what 2020 was like, after 2 face-to-face interviews, we had to move to a virtual platform, which was not only new for me, but also it was new for our narrators. So that was a learning experience for all of us, and we did just fine with it. I want to tell you 2 stories, but before I do that, I want to just show how this project helps us connect some dots. So there is a judge in North Las Vegas. His name is Chris Lee. He came here as a toddler. He came here because his dad was an acupuncturist. And in 1973, when they arrived here, Nevada had become the first state to have an acupuncture board. So because Nevada did that, North Las Vegas has a homegrown judge. Grew up in Las Vegas and is now serving the people of North Las Vegas. We also interviewed my doctor. She's a DO. She grew up in Reno. Her parents came to Nevada because in 1983, we had started to regulate homeopathy as a practice. So not only do we have a homegrown judge, we also have a Nevadan as a doctor here in Clark County. But those are just 2 of the dots that connect to Nevada's history. So the first story I want to tell you is about a family that moved here from Taiwan. 7 children, 2 girls. One of the girls would not grow up to adulthood. The other girl was the 5th of the 7 children. The family came here because the dad was very mechanically talented and could repair air conditioners. They came here in 1970. The parents spoke Taiwanese and Japanese. Japanese because Japan, Imperial Japan, had colonized Taiwan. They didn't speak English. Their children spoke Taiwanese and Mandarin because by the time they were in school, China had colonized Taiwan. Nobody spoke English. the children started school here at Roy Martin, or the daughter did. She was 12 years old. She had a teacher who gave her own time to tutor this young girl after school in English. The teacher did not speak Taiwanese, but she could communicate with this young girl's parents in Japanese because she was a Korean American, and Imperial Japan had also colonized her country when she was a child. So languages also speak to the history of the people who come here. This young girl grew up to become a firefighter. And she chose to become a firefighter because she wanted to be able to teach her children and help them with their homework. She knew she couldn't do that because she hadn't gone through the American elementary school system. So she wanted to be able to volunteer in the classroom and eavesdrop so that she could help her kids after school. She became a firefighter because that flexible schedule allowed her to do just that. She was in the second class of 3 each of women who joined the Las Vegas Fire Department, now Las Vegas Fire and Rescue. She retired in 2009 after 20 years of service as the highest ranking Asian American woman firefighter in the United States. And her name's Sharina Clevin, and her daughter is sitting right there waiting to talk to you about the Neon Museum.
Beautiful.
And we got to interview Sharina because her daughter sent us an email after hearing Clay T talk about the project on, was it KNPR?
Wonderful.
So the other story I want to tell you is how this project and the other projects we do at the Oral History Research Center send ripples out into the community that come back. So in March, I got, oh dear. Thank you. I got a phone call from one of your employees, and I hope I am pronouncing her name correctly. Her name is, thank you. Thank you. I props. Her name is Tia Ka'awamo. Thank you. And she is a legal records specialist in the Office of the City Attorney in the Civil Division. She called because she wanted to know about a pack of cards that she had received from a councilwoman. It's a little pack of 4 gift cards. Councilwoman Alan Polensky was one of the narrators for our project that you helped fund, and the councilwoman gave this pack of cards to Tia. Tia was interested in the cards because she wanted to plan an event for the AAPI city employees on May 11th. And she wanted to have these cards to give to the employees. How could she get these cards? So I explained to her how the councilwoman had gotten her pack of cards. We do give them to each narrator. And the reason we got the cards in the first place is because another narrator, Jean Munson, who's a professor in the art department, had challenged her students to create a greeting card that reflected their heritage. So on the back of each card, there are 4 designs. On the back of each one talks a little bit about the artist who drew the card, and a little bit about the Reflections project that you so kindly funded. So when I explained to Tia how she could get a set of cards, we scheduled an interview. I was going to give them to her anyway. But we scheduled an interview, and we did interview Tia on April 28th. Her interview is right now in process of being edited. She invited us to the May 11th employee AAPI committee employee event because Your Honor had declared May 11th as AAPI Appreciation Day. So for that event, we brought 50 packs of these cards, and you're each going to get a pack. And we also recorded a panel called Talking Stories. This was a panel done by 6 employees and moderated by a 7th employee. 2 of the employees we had already interviewed, Judge Cynthia Leung and Guy Finalisi. 4 of the others we had not. But when we do an interview and when we send it for corrections, we invite the narrators to give us pictures that we can include in the final product. And we did the same thing with this panel. We included pictures of the event.
Here in City Hall.
And it was held here at City Hall May 11th on the 2nd floor in the cafe. Madam Mayor, this is for you.
Thank you very much.
And
Honor.
a pack of cards for each of the committee.
Thank you.
So all of these ripples came from your donation, and we'd like to thank you so much.
Well, we thank you, and certainly Ms. Quigley as well as our forever, ever helper here in restoring memories of wonderful times. We certainly appreciate it. I know from Commission, anyone, any comments, any questions?
Just a quick question, Mayor.
Yes.
It's probably a long discussion, but I do remember back in 1976 when then attorney Oscar Goodman says cameras in the courtroom is not appropriate because people will react differently. The world hasn't changed because cameras are now in the courtroom. I'm wondering why we still do oral histories with no cameras. Everybody has a camera they carry around with them. Is there a reason why we don't do that?
Several reasons. The main one is that our servers would be full in such a rapid amount of time. And most researchers who use the oral histories really want to use the audio and or the printed word. So to watch an oral history when you're doing research means just watching a talking head for 2 hours.
I would hope that maybe you could ask for a grant in the future to get bigger servers.
So is that a grant from the commission?
You can always come back, you know that. Our pockets are getting deeper as long as we hold on. But thank you for this wonderful report. And I wanted to share, of course, you know, that Councilwoman Alan Polensky is part Korean. So no wonder of her devotion to this project, and very generous too. But we're very excited, and I certainly will share this, and we will have it in the mayor's office in perpetuity. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, we will move on to agenda item 7. And before we do that, I mean, many of you will notice that the gentleman sitting in Val Steed's seat looks younger than Val. In fact, he is. And Val Steed's been with us and remains with us. He's 42 years in our city attorney's office. But this young man is our new almost finalized City Attorney Jeff Dorkak. And he joins us. He is a graduate of Notre Dame and then Ohio State Law. And so we welcome him and thank him. You've been to this commission meeting before, correct?
Correct, Mayor. You introduced me, I think, 2 meetings ago. I missed the last meeting. I
You
can't
were
remember
fired.
why.
We
Yeah, I think I was
fired
fired that month. But yes, to your point, I'll be the next city attorney. The main reason I went for it was to guarantee that I could keep myself as board counsel for the Centennial Commission. So that's why.
So go Notre Dame. I know that as I look down to Mr. Mowbray down there. So thank you. All right, so we're on to agenda item 723-0354 CLC1. This is a final report by staff from the City of Las Vegas Public Works Department regarding the completion of the refurbishments and installation of the Rummel, Paradise, Fun City Motel signs funded by the Commission for the Las Vegas Centennial. And these signs are in Ward 3 with Councilwoman Diaz, who I think is unable to be here. There you are. Okay, I look to the right for you always instead of the left. I know, it's wonderful. A different view of the council chambers. So please, thank you very much. Please go forward.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Mayor, Commission, staff, and guests. My name is Gina Venglass, and I am the Assistant City Engineer for the city's Public Works Department, here to give a final summary of the neon sign project. So we did it. It's been a long time
Yes,
coming.
Bravo.
And this map we originally created in 2012. I asked our team member when our first version was done, and that was
Wow.
over 10 years ago. So we have updated it with pictures of all of the signs in their final placement, which I think is phenomenal.
Beautiful.
And so I really felt it was important that the very first thing I do today is appreciate this commission and the funding that was able to make the Signs on Sticks project come to completion. And I wrote on the slide 3 cheers for a reliable, creative, and dedicated team, because it really was a team, a large team that made these signs come together. So thank you, Centennial Commission, City of Las Vegas, the Regional Transportation Commission, the city's Cultural Affairs section, Planning, Public Works, the City Attorney's Office, the Neon Museum, Las Vegas Paving, and YESCO. And anybody else I forgot, I do appreciate you. So for the Las Vegas Boulevard project, which is wrapping up construction now, all of the signs that we installed with the project, the total value was $1.2 million. And of all of the sign funding, 70% of that funding came from the Centennial Commission. So that's saying a lot, and it's showing your commitment to this important project in the city's scenic byway. City of Las Vegas contributed 22% of the funding, and Regional Transportation Commission contributed 8% of the total funding. And with that, I have some photos of the signs in the day and nighttime views. This is our Clark Inn Motel sign.
Beautiful.
The Lone Palm Motel.
Wow.
Motel Domino. Fun City sign. Yes. Thank you to Commissioner Truesdell for helping us get this sign to refurbish for the project. It came out so good. I love the colors. And Las Vegas, like I said before, is a fun city, and I lost the slideshow. There we go. Paradise Motel and the Rummel Motel, and a little collage I made before. So thank you very much.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jeannie. Really, it is impressive. And for those of us who are old enough to remember them when they were in their special spots before, it's wonderful to see them saved and preserved for the future. It's great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, quick question. Does Public Works have any other historic preservation projects on the burner, back burner, front burner, ideas, plans?
It's possible. I don't have any on the top of my head, but we do have so many projects, so I can ask, especially the architectural team, and see if anything's in the.
But there's no
the
funding
queue.
existing right now. There's no other project that you've got. Okay.
Not that I know of.
Thank you.
So I need to find one, and we will.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Ron, I have a question.
Yes,
may?
please.
Thank you, yep. Oh, she's left.
Jeannie, you want to come back?
Come back.
Or Governor,
What?
Senator?
You know, this is a beautiful project. I love the signage. We've discussed this some years ago. It's dominated by these motel signs, which have been beautifully restored. Is that the only signs that would be appropriate for this type of project? I mean, 90% appear to be motels and are very nicely done. Don't misunderstand me, but nothing else that would qualify for this that would be other than a motel? I guess that's my question.
It's a good question. We have talked about it here before. Some of the challenges are, what signs do the city have access to? What signs have been either donated to the city or part of the Neon Museum's inventory that they are able to loan us on a long-term loan? So really, it's the availability of particular signs that it comes down to.
Yeah. Well, it seems to me that if you all look at a sign and said, God, I'd love to have that one, I think people on the commission would be helpful and try to persuade that person that would he or she or it or them be willing to donate that, and it would be a deductible benefit because it would be to a nonprofit such as the City of Las Vegas. Anyway, I don't want to prolong this, but it just seems to me that these are beautiful signs. I wish we had a little bit more, and this is a 21st century word, diversity.
Thank you, and I will keep that in mind for the future.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Okay, we're going on to agenda item 8, 230324 CLC1, discussion for possible action regarding approval of a grant request for $79,732 by the Neon Museum for costs associated with the interior repairs, upgrades of La Concha Hotel lobby located 770 Las Vegas Boulevard North, and authorizing President to execute the grant agreement as approved by the city attorney. And this wonderful museum is in Ward 5 with Councilman Creer. And hello, everybody.
Hello.
How are you?
Doing very well, Mayor.
Great.
Thank you very much. Mayor, it's great to see you. Commissioners, thank you very much for allowing us to once again come before you for another opportunity to preserve and present and interpret the history of Las Vegas here in our wonderful museum. So with that, we'd love to be able to present to you a La Concha lobby assessment and improvements plan that we've got for you. I'll just turn this over to my two colleagues who are, I'm just here as support and cheerleader in this, as these two incredible people, Emily Fulmer, our Senior Collections Manager, and Jennifer Clevin, our Director of Advancement, have long tenures with the museum and have long tenures with this building and can provide you greater insights than I can in my 2 years with the museum. So with that, let me turn it over to Emily.
Hello, everyone. The history of the La Concha Motel dates back to 1961. It was originally constructed right next to the Riviera Hotel and Casino on the Las Vegas Strip. The building was designed by renowned architect Paul Revere Williams, the first black architect initiated into the American Institute of Architects, and was posthumously initiated as a fellow. The building was closing around 2005. The Dumani family, who originally opened the property, decided to save the building and donate it to the museum to be its lobby. This took a long endeavor to move and reconstruct the building, so it was cut into multiple pieces and moved up the Las Vegas Strip to be our visitor center where it is today. Along with this, we became a national, we were initiated into the Nevada State Register of Historic Places, as well as listed on the city's Register of Historic Places as well. Along with the reconstruction of the building, this meant that old materials dating back to 1961, as well as new materials, were combined to splice the building back together. With this, the materials age at different rates, particularly the older materials expand and contract at a different rate than the newer materials, particularly with increased temperature and humidity, especially in the summer. To help delineate from this damage to the building with the expansion and contraction, the museum contracted WJE, an engineer firm, in 2017 to conduct an exterior analysis of the building. At this time, there was not an analysis of the interior of the building. And since then, we have noticed some fissure cracking, as well as blisters and some spalling noted in the photographs here. A new assessment of the interior and exterior of the building is necessary to determine if any damage is noted, especially if it's cosmetic damage or if it is structural damage. For this assessment, we are hoping to contract Melvin Green and Associates, who originally reconstructed the building for our visitor center. They will be subcontracting Acquire to conduct ground penetrating radar analysis on the building. This will help us determine if there is water penetrating through the roof and causing some of the interior fissure cracking we have noted. This team will also provide electronic scans, which will help us determine our next steps to preserve the building.
Jennifer Clevin, for the record. As part of this project, what we'd like to do is address our visitor experience. So when we first opened in 2012, we were anticipating probably 50,000 guests a year, and we're currently at 200,000. So what that means is the lobby has degraded at a quicker rate than we had anticipated, which hence the need for new carpet. You can see in the image that there's a tear, and we'd like to have new period-appropriate carpet replaced.
Also, along with the reconstruction of the building, electrical conduit was added to the roof membrane. Though over the years, the adhesive that was originally applied to this has failed and has begun to sloop in some sections, as you can see in this image.
Part of the visitor experience as well is bringing us up to speed with technology. What we realize is we need to have monitors that really explain how you access the museum, what are the options, and then we can use these monitors for exhibitions as well. The paint over 10 years has needed to be redone. Inside the lobby, there is one back wall, and then there's a ceiling that is attached. All of the front of the La Concha is glass.
Also, originally, the building in 1961 did have plaster on the back wall. As a part of the movement of the building, the back wall was not moved, so this is actually all of a modern reconstruction. And to make it look similar to the 1961 opening, we would like to plaster over the cinder block wall. All of this work also will go through the State Historic Preservation Office, as well as any certificate of appropriateness, documents that will need to be go through the HPC, though most of these are interior work pieces that will not need to go through the certificate of appropriateness review.
If you go back to that last image, I just want to point out the top is plastered, whereas the bottom is just the cinder block painted. We're not sure why it was selected to do that in 2012. So essentially, we just want to finish plastering. It's not anything that's new. It's just a continuation of this top.
And are you ready for some questions? I know Member Coffin has, is that complete there?
We have our timeline on the screen, and then we can move forward to our budget, and we're ready for questions.
Okay.
So,
do you want to explain this, and then we'll have the questions? We'll start with Member Coffin. Any comments here, please?
all right, Your Honor, I'll ask the question then. Yeah, I see the price that you're asking is $79,000. That's an estimate because you're using the same engineer that designed all this that you're now seeking repairs for. And it's only been, a decade or so, or a little more than that, but that's, So it troubles me that you'd be using the same contractors, Melvin Green and Associates. Why? Why are we using the same ones that fixed the place?
So just to be clear, we're not using a contractor. This is not to do the improvements. This is to do an assessment on the property. So what we need to determine is the structural integrity of the building and how strongly the building is holding up under Las Vegas sun and Las Vegas winter. So that Melvin Green was the structural engineer who was responsible for slicing La Concha sort of like an orange and bringing it down Las Vegas Boulevard to its present site. So he was the engineer who did it, who has the most familiarity with the building and with the structural joints where the building was reassembled. So he's going to know where that would be the weakest point would be. Does that make sense?
Well, it makes sense only to the extent that he knows what he knew then. I'm going to guess. Just because there was a limited amount of money, and you do what you do when you can. But now we have a finished building which is falling apart, so to speak, slowly but surely, and it's a beautiful building. So it's worth saving. And the question is, again, why use the same people that you used to assess, you weren't here, to assess the condition and essentially say it's okay to open? And maybe it wasn't. Maybe it hadn't been done. Why the same person whose eyeballs looked at it then?
Sure.
Yeah, he may not have been the construction contractor, but he was looking at it all. He was being paid to do that.
Correct. The idea being that we're using a contractor who installed the building and reassembled the building on its site now, and can then look at it now with over, almost 15 years in age since that reassembly, and be able to give you an apples to apples comparison, whereas a new contractor coming in is going to give you a different assessment than that approach.
Bob,
Yeah,
if
he
I
might.
could,
Go ahead.
Mayor,
I guess
could
maybe
sort of
I'm
jump
talking
in.
it to death.
Okay, member
But do you understand my dilemma?
I do understand the question, but there's another piece. There's a big asterisk with Mel Green, and this is Mel Green is in the state of Nevada the leading historic preservation expert. Certainly, there's a couple of others that are in the top 10 and top 5, but Mel stays on top of the opportunities, the issues, the products that are available. This is not something that he's going to think about from 20 years ago or 10 years ago. He knows what's the latest that is going on today. But I have some of the same concerns as you do about this. I'm very worried about that building. I'm very worried about the shell specifically. Mm-hmm. The roof, we can deal with roofs, but that shell, there was a funding request a few years ago to the state of Nevada that went into a great amount of detail about the condition of those shells and the material that they were made of. They're not made of the world's most preservation-minded material. And I was thinking what the Clark County Flood Control announced this past week, that we're in monsoon season and that water wins is their campaign. And then all of a sudden last night we were hit with something that just made me even more nervous about it. I don't have a problem with Mel Green. I do have a problem waiting another year to get an update on the challenges with the shell and with the roof. And I'm just wondering if there's a way that we can increase the funding and get something done much quicker. Because that facade, the building, the shell, the iconic structure, I don't think it can stand a major storm.
And I'd like to add to that. I am so excited about the fact that we may be moving this structure if it will withstand it. I think the continuity of having somebody's eyes who looked at it before is very significant, because you can see what's been challenged in the time. So the fact of what Member Stoddall suggested about increasing a look for the need of it, but I too worry because I know there is consideration, number one, a new location for some of or all of the museum. How does that in fact affect this project? Two, without La Concha's open front, which is so exciting, it has to be preserved. Can it be moved again? Is that part of the assessment? I was told maybe with the right planning and everything else, but it will cost.
Correct.
So the timeline for what that move might be figures in. But listening to what both members of the commission have said, the one thing is if you intend to use it now, it's embarrassing to me to have visitors come down to this phenomenal piece of architecture and walk into that filthy carpet and have that look and have the walls, but to me that's a minimal repair and what kind of carpet you're going to use. But we want it preserved, and looking for how long is the question. What is on the plate now to move that piece, and how fast can all of this move so you can make it ready for our wonderful September, late September, October, November?
You've done a beautiful job of outlining our timeline for us, and so thank you very much for that. So as early as the beginning of next month, we can contract with Mel Green and begin the assessment process. We can then have his report expected back to us by October, so 60 days to begin to have that assessment process. We can have carpeting beginning also in August, so taking advantage of the slower traffic time so that it's less disruptive to our visitors, and have that carpeting replaced and have that taken care of by September, October. We are looking at, through this process of doing this, also considering the fact that we are open 365 days a year and wanting to be as least disruptive to our visitors as we can be in this process, but also keeping in mind that our job is to be a steward of this historic property. So we are putting that forefront in our efforts.
And how does it align, however, if I may ask you,
Please.
with a possible move? Are you anywhere with that? And then are you throwing money into something that you're just going to have to redo?
And so that's why we went for the assessment, is to determine the structural integrity of the building, is that should the museum expand into a different site, whether that is moving and relocating or it is in fact having a satellite location, should the La Concha be up for relocation, can this building withstand another move? And that is part of the assessment that's been baked into what Mel Green has been required to provide as far as his assessment goes.
So this is a Band-Aid at this point, but bringing in Mr. Green.
This is, Mr. Green is providing us with the assessment to address Commissioner Stoddle's concerns. Commissioner Stoddle's concerns of the roof membrane and withdrawing and withstanding weather and other elements, we need to address those items. This is the first step, is finding out what do we need to do in order to do that. So we'll have an answer for that.
Can I jump here? We've got some apples and oranges and pears and lemons that is kind of different things. One is what the mayor is asking, and that is whether or not the money we are spending, clearly, if that building is going to stay there, it needs new carpet.
Right.
Sure.
And by the way, as a tangent, your math doesn't work here. The numbers you have for the carpet don't match the bid numbers. You've got two bid numbers in there, and
Sorry,
neither one of them matches.
The bid numbers include tax. So the bid numbers include tax, so I just deducted the tax.
So which one are you?
I believe it's the higher dollar value.
The 90s. the 96 or the, 'cause I'd like to just sort of clear that up, then move to the bigger picture. Which one is it?
Against you.
It's whichever, I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me. It's the higher dollar one.
The higher dollar is 10,000,
So then it just subtracts the tax from that.
and that should come out with the number that's in the contract?
Sorry, I'm trying to advance. I'm stuck on my, there it is.
Right, so that comes out to $9,730 as an estimate.
Okay, so you're going with the second version of the
In
different sort of
anticipation that
style.
it could run over, because right now our air conditioning is also underneath in the ground because of the windows in the front. So once they pull up the carpeting, they're in for a treat to understand what that looks like and then what can adhere
So
correctly.
that clears off that minor,
Yeah.
that sort of minor point. Thank you. The question, though, is do we invest carpeting and painting and all that for the lobby, which is needed, but do we invest that money if we're not going to stay there?
Wait, let me be very clear for everyone on this, everyone everywhere. We are stewards of that building. We are going to do everything. The future of the Neon Museum, should that involve a future where the Neon Museum boneyard is no longer there, that doesn't mean that we won't keep La Concha and care for La Concha and add. We own the property. The museum owns the property adjacent to it, which we currently call the Boulevard.
Right.
There was a convenience store, I believe, on that property. We own that property outright, which should there be the assessment comes back that says we can't move the building, then that becomes some sort of educational center, something that we can provide local teaching opportunities for educators, things of that nature, so that building will always remain in our care. We are not going to step
And
away
who
from
owns
that.
the land?
I'm sorry?
Who owns the land?
The Boulevard Gallery
No,
next,
where the,
the city owns the land where La Concha is placed.
okay. Okay, so that sort of answers that question in the sense that the carpeting and the painting needs to be done whether you find a new home.
Correct.
Someplace else next year.
And to Jennifer's point, that's something that needs to happen on a more regular basis than every 10 years.
Okay, so then the question is still, what is Mel Green's assessment going to do? I'm concerned right now in its current location that it's not going to be able to stand a significant monsoon or a big rain, and I would like to see his assessment done much quicker, and is there a way that we can fund a few extra dollars to get that done rather than in 6 months, let's get it done in 90 days or 30 days or whatever.
Yes, so he will need 5 days of field testing to do analysis on the building. His report just takes 60 days to compile since he is working with a subcontractor, Acquire. They work with a lot of mason buildings as well as adobe structures, so they're very familiar with the material. And in 2017, when we did an analysis of the building, it was just the exterior of the shell, but the interior was never analyzed at that time. So currently, this is our need for the assessment is to make sure it is sound today, and we could contract as soon as.
And that is Helix. Helix is the electrical contractor on this, and he has been, or they have been in to make the assessment, and that is an accurate figure included in the totality of your ask.
Yes. So first, we would need the assessment done first to verify the building can withstand the change of the electrical conduit in the roof. Once that analysis is done, we will then contract the other companies afterwards, since the assessment is necessary first.
So if I may, then, you are planning, once you've heard from Mr. Green his assessment and moving it up if you can, you will come back to us with that report?
Correct.
So let me just, but it's two major elements. One, can that building be moved? And having no knowledge of architecture other than reports that I've read, that's really a big question about that, whether that can be moved one more time. So then, more importantly, what needs to be done to preserve from the rain and the weather?
Correct.
Are we going to get those two things out of Mel Green for $32,000?
Correct.
Yes.
Absolutely. That is the purpose of hiring this assessment, is to answer those questions. What are the steps that are necessary to stabilize the building? And in consideration of if the museum were to expand into another site, and La Concha being a part of that site, can it withstand a move?
Okay.
If it can, what are the steps necessary? If it can't, what is it that we do to permanently shore it up as much as
That's
possible?
perfect. That's exactly what I was hoping to hear.
Good.
So secondly, Mel Green will say yes or no, but isn't there another funding that's going to have to be done? And that's when he says this is the problem, then somebody's going to have to come in and come up with construction plans.
So we're going to come back to Centennial Commission, and we are going to give you the report on this and say that our next step is getting the estimates together for what it is going to cost to address the concerns that you brought up, and probably more concerns that you're not aware of now. So let's get this made sure that this historic gem is cared for in the long run. So
well,
yes,
you
that's
make
a
a
separate
motion that we
request
approve.
entirely.
Okay, there's a motion to approve with a second.
I'll second.
Seconded and third by Member Mowbray down there. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Goodbye, have a good time.
Thank
Let us know when everything's done. How long is this going to take to get?
We will
Move up and get back to us about Mr. Green, right? When you can move it up.
It should be, if the timing works, it'll be the next commission meeting. If not, timing doesn't work, it'll be the commission meeting after that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We
And if
appreciate
you'll
it.
let Dr. Seabrandt know, because then she can just notify us that it's been moved up and when.
We will be happy to
Thank
do
you.
so. Thank you very much for your
Thank
generosity.
you both. Okay, agenda item 9, is that right? Is that where we are? 9, okay. 230325 CLC1, discussion for possible action regarding approval of grant request for $22,831.34 by Old Time Reunion for costs associated with the 2023 Old Time Reunion event that documents the cultural and historical heritage of the city of Las Vegas, authorizing President to execute the grant agreement is approved by the city attorney. Hello.
Good afternoon, members of the commission. My name is Kevin Buckley. I act as the chairman of the Old Timers Foundation, or dinner party, I call it. This is our 27th year, and we are requesting your continued support. We're asking for more money this time to basically cover fixed overhead expenses, which we're sure we're going to have. We draw no salaries. This is a checking account that's only used to pay for services provided to bring about the event every year. We took a sabbatical with the rest of the country during the COVID situation. We're back at full swing, although I think last year we had 400 people. We're expecting a lot more people this year. And I'm here to answer any questions you may have, and I also have save the date posters, which I would like to leave here.
How much did they cost?
And have them mingle, around.
Did you spend your money too early?
And for those of you, we were recently here, I'm Julie
Excuse me,
Gilday.
and your name, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am. Julie Gilday Schaefer with the JGS Group, and been part of the Old Time Reunion since my mother started recruiting me to join her 20 years ago. Angie Wallen, you may know her, and then Thalia Dondero got me involved in helping to produce it, and then Kevin has secured my participation.
To at least around the corner of 30 years. We are
Yes.
all getting older. We're becoming centennials.
Exactly. So one of the things that we have added this year, and those of you who are on the email list may have seen this email inviting you to send photos of old timers who have passed on. And we're going to have a slideshow this year with their photos. So wanted to make sure, and Mayor Goodman, I know that you saw it. Thank you for your suggestion. I reached out to Amy to ask for Lonnie Hammergren's some photos from him.
Okay.
And so we are very intent as an organization to preserve the history of Las Vegas and those people who have helped build the community. And as Kevin mentioned, we had 400 people last year, and we anticipate 450 to possibly 500. We've had so much interest that people are coming out of the woodwork a little bit this year, which is interesting that they've come back with such an interest. And what we're also seeing is that while my mother's generation started attending, now my generation is also actively attending the Old Time Reunion, so the stories continue. And while at the Old Time Reunion, we also have a photographer and videographer to capture the stories of those people who are in attendance. And these are the details of the event. I hope that we see
should offer a $5 discount for anybody who brings a picture.
Well, we want them in advance. We want them early.
In advance. They get it only if they send it in advance, so then you can put it on your video.
Well, the mayor says so.
Well, I don't know. We've already received so many. We'd have to go back and credit them. We'll have
Too
to.
bad, they're too good. Just take it.
Mayor, just a quick question.
Yes, please. Wow.
Preserving is only part of the story.
I'm sorry?
Preserving is only part of the story. The other part is sharing. And I would hope that there is some way that you're going to be able to share with the general public a quarter century
Sure.
online, I mean, some images, some what's going to happen with all the video that's been taken over the years? Who has that? Where are all the photographs? Are they going to go online?
They are posted on our website, which is oldtimereunion.com.
But that needs to happen.
We also are active in Facebook all the time.
There's some opportunities for improvement in that area.
We agree. We agree. And
I mean, maybe, well, okay.
No, that's a good point. I mean, because we're really trying to spread a wide web here. So yes.
I mean, there's a lot of people who volunteer their time that have great intentions, but sometimes you need to go out and hire a professional that does that on a regular basis and put something together. And I think that if we could, and my second point is, and this event's going to be held where?
Orleans.
At the Orleans.
Okay.
And the reason we are at the Orleans is because the Boyd Group, specifically Mr. Boyd, doesn't change the price. And we have the same staff, and when you've been there, you really understand what an incredible staff they have there, as well as the California Club.
I have a question.
Okay, let's hear from
Bill
Member
Boyd
Coffin
has
first.
been-
Hold on one sec, please, if you would.
Please,
I know you were
age has
he's
its
senior,
privileges.
but you're going first
All right.
because you came in.
Thank you. Governor was missing from that list of
please.
people who have attended. I want to call your attention to that to make sure that Governor Bryan doesn't get too upset.
Thank you. We will add his name.
Now, that wasn't the reason I asked for recognition. I love it, first of all. I had a great time last year, and it really, really was deserving. What a great way to come out of the pandemic. Now then, it's always been out in the county at the strip hotels or someplace like that. Bill Boyd and the others have nice interests downtown. There's nice places to hold gatherings exactly like this. The Plaza, Circa, you name it. Why can't we start, not for this year, too late. How can we do it in the future so that we keep it in Las Vegas City, because that's where the money comes from?
I think, and Julie would be well to comment on that because she deals with facilities, but I think the physical facility, parking, ease to get to the size of the room, and certainly the cost. Those are all the reasons we always go back. We do bid it. We go out and see what's out there, but we just can't get anything close to that number. And that number is just passed directly onto the ticket price.
And so to your point, for next year, for example, we could reach out to Circa, some of the larger properties, because as we're growing, we need something that has the large space to accommodate 500 attendees plus as the event keeps growing, and obviously the incredible discount that we're provided. So I'd be happy to take a look at that.
Well, just as an example of valet parking, the valet is like a C at the Orleans, and it's not downtown. And
Well, yeah.
people get there, they get there earlier, although it starts at 4:30, they're starting to come at 4 o'clock.
Well, Mayor,
So I'm just
I
saying,
just
no,
brought
those
it
are-
up. I just brought it up because
Yeah.
we always think of this. There are more things you can do
Sure.
with the city of Las Vegas stuff. You can have tables that have maybe DVDs of our movies that we show on Channel 2 and sell them for a nice price. Just all kinds of things we could peddle there. Let's get commercial, because you need the money. And then you already talked about needing more next year. You just didn't say it. Thank you.
Member Bryan, please go.
And I take it Bill Boyd,
No.
One
Question, you go ahead,
excuse me,
go
a
ahead.
quick question, to make sure we understood you correctly, about the information on the historical City of Las Vegas, the shows on DVD. You're saying that we can sell them at the event?
Maybe we cut a deal. I'm sorry. It's out of my
I don't think we can sell
city
them,
lawyers there, but let's not talk
but I'm
about
not sure.
It's not a deal.
Okay.
We'll check with Dr. Seabrand.
So I-
Well, to be honest, we pick this gavel up towards the due date every year, so these suggestions are real good suggestions.
If they're
And
possible.
we try to improve on it, yet keep it as the same as possible, but we want to improve on it, so these are good suggestions. Especially getting out there in the public domain.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's try it again.
Kevin, Bill Boyd has been very good to us over the years. Bill is in his 90s, as you know. Have we built a relationship with others to carry on Bill's legacy when that time comes? We've got somebody who is sympathetic to what we're trying to do here and are willing to continue to give us, an affordable rate so that this will continue indefinitely.
Senator, I don't know. Is Kevin Smith still the president? Because if he's still the president, then we can reach out to him real easily.
Just seems to me that when Bill leaves us, who's our advocate? Yeah.
Yes.
Understood.
Yes.
Okay, so any more comments, questions? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion on agenda item 9. There's a motion to approve, and by Member Coffin, seconded by Member Bryan. All in favor, please signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
We thank you very much for your support. And it's been enjoyable to listen to the other things that you're involved in. I had no idea. Now I think of you every time I go down Las Vegas Boulevard and see the old signs.
Yeah.
So where would you like us to leave the save the dates?
If you would give them right here to our city clerk, we can then just go ahead and pass them out, right? Perfect. Right here.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful.
I mean, we still
Thank
have to
you.
pay, right? We just get that. We can't, that's not good for anything.
Yes, correct. It's not free.
Still have to pay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for what you do. Okay, let's go on to agenda item 10, 230355 CLC1. Discussion for possible action regarding approval of funding in the amount of $100,000 to KME Architects to create the historic West Side design guidelines for commercial and residential properties located in the historic West Side, an area roughly bounded by Owens Avenue, Interstate 15, Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, Ward 5, Councilman Creel.
So Diane Seabram for the record. Mike made me come up here, so I'd rather present from my chair, but we will do it this way.
For the record, Michael Howe, Community Development.
Okay, so thank you very much. So this commission in the past has had different discussions about grants versus contracts of doing a project that similar to our movies, where we hire a consultant to do the work for us instead of somebody coming to us with a grant. And this is what we are proposing, to have a contract to do historic West Side guidelines, design guidelines for the historic West Side. And what that means is we would hire consultants to create these guidelines that will assist to revitalize and improve that community. We have an estimated cost of $100,000, an estimated time frame of about 7 months, and the result would be a guidelines that's appropriate for restorations and new construction in the historic West Side. And this is a two-step process, so first we request the funding, and then if the funding is granted, then we work on a contract, and we'll come back to this commission with the actual contract. So this is the boundary map of what is considered the historic West Side. Owens, US 95 and the 515, the 115 Main Street, and MLK Jr. Boulevard. My computer keeps going blank. All right, so everybody is aware that this is a historic area, and I didn't include the entire history of the area, Commissioner Stoddall, because I didn't have that much time. So just putting it into one small little frame began as a residential community in the 20s. It's named because of its location on the west side of the tracks. It was a diverse community initially, then became a black community, forced there by Jim Crow laws, and the areas had a history of booms and busts. So there's a lot of old buildings there, there's a lot of vacant lots there, there are some more recent buildings, and within this, the historic area, on our Historic Preservation Commission, we just completed a most recent survey of historic resources in the area. And in addition to what's already listed on the Historic Register, and that would be the Harrison Boarding House, the Historic West Side School, the Bonanza Underpants, and the Moulin Rouge, that survey has now identified 6 properties that would be potentially eligible for the National Register, and another 9 that are potentially eligible for the local register. And what that means is that when new buildings are being proposed or restorations are being proposed, how do we make sure that we keep the feel of the history? Can you take this part? I'll let Mike explain the 100 plan, is how this is going to complement what's already in progress and coming up.
Sure, and I'll give a summary, really, because Diane mentioned that there's multiple steps in this process. This goes back to the completion of the 100 plan and looking at the historic West Side as a district. One of the first moves officially made by the city was a form-based code to recognize the context and character of this unique district. And so the form-based code is really the procedural way to implement the 100 plan, part of the downtown master plan. The desire for the design guidelines is they're a subcomponent of the historic West Side form-based code. They take an extra step because one of the unique things that we're trying to preserve is the integrity and the character that's very unique to the West Side. I don't want to say fear, that's a strong word. I anticipate great development to start kicking off. And when you have redevelopment, if we don't have a good plan in place to say, this is really what we want to look like in recognition of the historic pattern that was there. And one of the challenges with historic West Side is there's a lot of vacant land, there's a lot of property that's been lost, a lot of buildings have been lost, but we do have an intensive survey that we now have in place that we can build off of. We have extensive historic photographs, and we have a lot of input from the community that they don't want to lose the character and the soul of their district. And so we are looking to develop in a manner with the form-based code and the other planning tools that we have, is something on record that we can give to someone who wants to develop in the West Side. This is what we want it to look like. This is the community telling us in a guideline, this is what we're looking for.
Thank you. And so just to kind of recap that, so what are these guidelines? They are going to, they will be a book, if you will, that will be given to developers, to people that want to do some type of restoration project on their property, residential or commercial, and these guidelines will say this is recommended or this is not recommended. And that way we would hope to keep that neighborhood looking, as Mike was saying, for the form-based code, holding on to that history, but yet being updated to today's standards, but having that feel. So we have identified KME Architects and Chattel Historic Preservation Consultants as consultants for this project. They are now working on our John S. Park and Beverly Green Historic Neighborhood District Guidelines, and that's through our Historic Preservation Commission. They are actually going to be given their second draft at our meeting on Wednesday. So they are very familiar with the area, very familiar with the neighborhood. They also were both involved in the master plan for the historic West Side School when it was also restored, as well as other projects in the area. And just to, the KME Architects is Melvin Green, but it's not the same Melvin Green that the NEA Museum would be using as their consultant. There's two Melvin Greens that sometimes gets confusing. So this is the Melvin Green that's based over in Vegas and working on our current guidelines. This is a proposed table of contents of what this guidebook or guidelines would entail, and there would be the historical analysis, and again, that's taken from our historic resource surveys, the most recent one, and plus the other ones that have been done in the recent years. It's a visual guide to the West Side to include designs, features unique to the neighborhood. It will tell them types of construction that's typical for that West Side area, architectural features that are unique, material suggestions, use of windows, energy efficiency, also going into landscape materials and art, if there's going to be any signage, and model floor plans. Did you want to add anything to that, Mike?
Right, and within the scope of this work, we're really looking at establishing design guidelines, again, to give a reference, an informational reference of what looks most appropriate for the neighborhood. With that complete, that does give us the opportunity of moving into the next step, which is a pattern book, which is kind of like guidelines, but even more specific, where it takes actual lots and gives schematic designs that someone can get into more detail with how something would look. And then from there, we can take it another step and actually have pre-approved plans. So if somebody on a property that's ready to redevelop could come to the city, and if they qualify, actually have plans ready to go straight to the building permit stage and complete construction. This is warranted because it's all built off something that came from the design guidelines, compliance with the form-based code, and then compliance with the 100 plan. So if somebody's doing something that's written and documented and adopted and supported by the city specifically for the historic West Side, this gets us on a path to, I would say, the quickest and easiest redevelopment for a district that's looking to redevelop.
And who is the panel to whom they would appeal for who cares, windows? Let's say they have some different ideas on the windows. Are you saying that planning would be that body that they would then submit their idea to see if it works, or how do you regulate it to the best of our ability?
So to that, Madam Mayor, the quickest and easiest answer is that the guidelines become informational at this stage. Basically a reference. You're not compelled to follow them, but you have something in your hands that you can reference. We can always escalate it to more exacting standards, but we do that in a balance of that will slow down redevelopment because we'd have to create that panel.
Mayor, that was kind of the same question I had, because the language and this is just a proposal, and if the commission said yes, we like the general idea, then you're going to go out and hire somebody and they're going to come back with some ideas, or for example, you use the word in here, ensure. That's a pretty strong word. It's almost like you're going to have guaranteed. Is this going to be turned into code, or are these just strictly guidelines? And secondly, and kind of a bigger issue, and by the way, let me just say, for the commissioners that haven't read this, this is really a great history that is in here. I mean, this is fresh. It covers a period from 1905 up to 1930, which is often confused, and this is really a nice, clear language. But the reality of it is there were scattered homes from 1905 all the way to 1940. It's really the 1940s. KME and the other organizations really going to have their hands full to come up with designs that reflect, I don't know what time period, the 40s or the 50s for residential, and there are some existing residential areas that are there. So this is not just simply, well, here's a picture of a building in 1930 that we think could be replicated and fit that part of the history. Beyond the West Side School, there's not a lot from the 20s or the 30s, and even into the 40s. So the process would be that this group says, yes, we're going to give you the authority to go out and hire these firms, and then you're going to come back at the next meeting with the exact proposal?
That is correct, yes.
I mean, this is an exciting, but it's really a challenging opportunity. And then the last question I would have, you said this would be made available to developers.
So
I would hope that this is going to be both a printed copy, but really an electronic version that the general public could see, rather than just developers.
correct. And to you, Commissioner, it really would be an adopted product of the zoning code. So not to conflate or confuse things, you'll have guidelines as that specific to the West Side District zoning code. So it would be an adopted document, ultimately taking to City Council to adopt as an official city document. So it would be available to the public online for anyone that would want to reference it.
I've heard two things here. I heard one, that this is going to go through an adoption process by the Planning Commission and the City Council and would become part of the code?
Correct. As guidelines, they would be by referendum a set document as a component of the zoning code.
So any construction will have to go through that filter?
They would have it as a reference. So it would, I don't want to say filter, because they would have at least a guideline to show, as they're developing, an answer or response to what are you guys looking for? Like, what's the most appropriate or responsive design?
I own a piece of property on H and Washington. It's empty now. I'm making it up. And I'm going to build a house there. Do I have to follow your guidelines?
You're not compelled to follow the guidelines, but they would be an informational resource if you were curious to what, based on the survey, what best fits in the historic West Side.
Okay. But then secondly, this booklet, or this book that's going to be prepared by Mel Green and Chattel, that document will be online as soon as it's done, or does it have to go through some filter?
We would have to have it adopted. I mean, we would look to take it through City Council adoption as a referendum, just for.
So it won't come before this commission? You will not make a presentation of this document to this commission?
I mean, we can. I don't see that there's anything that would prevent that.
I think we should have it, yeah.
Yes, please.
I just want a clarification of a
Yes.
word they've been using repeatedly.
And to clarify, I'm sorry,
Referendum.
resolution.
What do you mean by referendum?
To clarify, I meant resolution.
Resolution, thanks.
Right.
And I'm curious about the 100,000, even though I've seen it's annotated in here. This will take approximately a half year, a little bit better. And then is there any variability? Is there an openness if they need more funding? Or is this entirely to KME Architects?
So if this funding were approved and we wrote the contract for $100,000, they would be bound by that $100,000.
Okay.
So it'd have to be that or under.
And they are expected to come back with recommendations and analysis on the entirety of this concept?
Correct. As we go into the next stage, so if we obtain approval today, we come back with KME and Chattel to go over the more detailed proposal, so we can start filling in more precisely that timeline and the deliverables.
So this is very amorphous to me at this point. And so we're believing in a concept to preserve the historic West Side architecture, design, all of that. And so we are going to an expert architect who will fulfill the requirements as written out and come back, and at halfway through or at the 7 months, they will then come back and present to us, or they present to you, and then what happens?
So from that stage, they present to us in that duration of working on the plan. We take that final draft, present to the Centennial Commission, and then with the acceptance, then from that stage, planning Department of Community Development can go through that stage of then introducing it to City Council as a document to be adopted via resolution.
And along the way, do you, as the experts, hiring the experts, have input? Are you expecting to have input or not till the end?
Oh, to your question, Madam Mayor, I expect elbow-deep input through the whole process.
So as you're going through it, is it possible that we could have halfway through a report of where you are?
Absolutely, yes.
Absolutely. Because to really clarify, this is a new concept. This is an idea of what can we put in place to answer the question, how do we protect the West Side?
History, so I mean, you have to start with something. So you can't make it mandatory, I gather, because at this point it's too broad a piece and there's not enough concrete evidence to have anything certain? Or am I misreading?
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Councilman. Councilman.
The question I have is, several years ago, not that long ago, planning they got a grant and did a complete study of historic West Las Vegas and put together a master plan. It seems like this is retreading some of that, or are we saying that master plan, since it was under the old code, it's just wasted, forget it, and then start fresh here? I have a few problems with what's presented to us, because you talk about redevelopment. There's almost no real redevelopment in West Las Vegas because 60-70% of the ownership is church related, so there's no tax base. And that came from a tour the city did of West Las Vegas during when they had the Planet APA here. So I'm trying to figure out what's the goal of this, and is it an achievable goal? Is it a academic effort? And I don't mean that badly. Don't get me wrong. I just if you put certain standards on some of those buildings, like the churches, they just don't spend the money. They never do anything. And I'm not being critical of anyone. It's just, this is a difficult area of town, and you're talking about coming up with guidelines, design guidelines, and a plan. When you talk to a lot of the people over there, and I do spend time over there periodically, they want to talk about bigger buildings, modern. Where's their part of the city become modernized? And I just want to make sure whatever we're asked to fund, or we do fund, looks to the future, not just stick it in the past, because I don't think that's fair to the community. The residents that have maintained their homes and live there and want these services, they want growth, but there's not a lot big enough to put more than 3 homes on. So this isn't developers are not gonna flock to this area without the city being able to give them a lot of money and redevelopment dollars. So we need to be cautious of that as we're looking at this specific area. It's not like anywhere else in town. And that's good, it's bad, it's just nowhere else in the state, or I would venture to say the Southwest, do you have such a concentration of church-owned properties of individual churches that are they're the ones buying up land. So unless all of the churches are on board with this program, I don't know how the city can find dollars anywhere to support development. But you understand that, and you know the hurdles that are there.
Absolutely. And if I may, to respond to that. So Commissioner Truesdale, you're correct. We had the 100 plan, so we had that basis of a master plan for the district that was completed. And from that, we went into the form-based code. So we rezoned and used a new zoning scheme in one case to really address the issues that we have with development being locked by the churches. That way that we could have alcohol uses that were being restricted, getting more lot coverage, changing up what we're looking for that were the zoning restrictions. So this is another element to add to that gives us a touch more of an answer to the community. Well, what are you doing to protect the community so we don't lose the soul? Now, what I'm talking about in regards to recent entitlements, and we have educational training facility, 20,000 plus square feet, right north of the historic West Side School. That's going through permit review. We have the downtown share West Side apartments, 90 units. That's through entitlements. So we have approved projects that are going to start popping up. And it's hard to balance speculation and people that are serious and people that they have the land, they have control of the land, they want to redevelop it, they don't have the tools. So we're juggling all these different things. Each time we learn a new thing that we have to address. How do we help people not be displaced and redevelop their property? At the same time, how do we help people that are interested in investing in the property? And all of it comes under the same general umbrella. What do we do to bring the West Side back without losing the soul of the West Side? So it's at each time it's like another tool that we want to add to the box. So I do feel confident that the rezoning has triggered something we haven't seen in years, and that's actual entitled projects that are now going through pulling permits and getting ready to develop. And hopefully, like all things, once you see ground changing, things coming up, that does inspire or get people to start talking about buying land or at least developing their properties. But it is a balancing act of trying to figure out what's keeping it from rebuilding.
But it's a positive impetus that you're trying to create, unless I'm missing this entirely, to encourage that development in the other side of the coin on the properties beyond church-held properties. For other development, and whether it's retail or housing or whatever, to have a base sort of standard of what you should be doing if you're looking into that.
Correct.
Yes, please.
Your Honor, thank you. Just a question on my mind here. It's kind of twofold. I spend a lot of time on the West Side now. I'm a member of a play group that is rehearsing, and we're rehearsing in an old church, Church of God in Christ, over there on the Glider, and that's behind Jerry's Nugget. Anyway, the point is that you've got to hold harmless people in the area. Now, that's north of it, because that's in Northtown, north of Owens. So going back into the traditional area we think of, and I did as a kid, you want to make sure that people, for cooperation, that they are held harmless for anything we might find that's not right. Code, I don't think code does much over there, and I think people, and especially the churches, they build room after room after room with volunteer labor. I think anybody really inspects. So my point is that if you go in there and you say, well, we want to look at this and that, they might get a little reluctant to share, and they got to be held harmless of things that might not be quite right. It's true that if safety comes up, then that's one thing, but from what I've seen, there's a lot of do-it-yourself going on. And if we develop a document that then becomes simply a vehicle for developers to take to a bank or an investment company and say, look, here's what we've got here, here's where we want to build, they won't be building a house. they'll be building something really big if they do, and God help us if it's a warehouse or something like that. But we have to be very careful of what we approve and what does this study lead to. Does it just simply become a vehicle for growth of a commercial nature instead of perhaps a return to retail, mercantile, and some residential? I mean, I don't want to bias this study. I like the idea of studying this. It's just that I think we need to be careful what we end up with. Thank you.
Yes, please, Ms. Helton.
This is Louise Helton for the record. Having worked in the West Side for a number of years, there's so many low-income families, and we know that it's a food desert. We know that there's so many things that are difficult to make happen over there. Commercially, for sure. I mean, they need a grocery store more than anything. My concern about this is that if these guidelines add expense, or another hoop for a developer to jump through, they're going to go somewhere else. And that's my biggest concern. The West Side needs more opportunity. And when you look at the things that have been built over there in the last, 15 years or so, you have Nevada Partners, you've got the Agassiz Center, you've got the new community centers. You also have the homes that have been developed instead of where Carrie Arms used to be. When you look at all of that, it's almost like people have been wanting to have something new and modern to give them a sense of pride. And I don't know where the desire, the impetus of these guidelines came from. I haven't ever heard from any of my friends, a steady drumbeat of, we really need to have more stuff that looks older. They have so many things that are over there that are older and are not looking their best. And just to get them to be brought back to what they were when they were new in some of those neighborhoods, that would be a huge hurdle for anybody to jump. And to try to achieve a new guideline might be impossible. So that's my concern.
So I think that one of the big challenges that you really face is the definition. Historic West Side is several different areas, and if we're going all the way up to Martin Luther King or Rancho, and it falls back into what we prefer to call North Las Vegas rather than North Town. It's North Las Vegas, and that's certainly part of West Las Vegas. I think if there was and then it's what is the history of the architectural history or the business history of that. There are certain areas that if you talk to the community, there's one section of downtown historic West Side that would like to come back, where there is barber shops and shopping, and I think that's the biggest thing that I hear. We want our community back a commercial area. So I'm trying to get to an answer to put my arms around, because I kind of fundamentally like what you're proposing, but it's too big. And then you run in, if we make it to the true historic West Las Vegas, then we run into the challenge with the churches and that whole area. At this point, I'm excited about the idea, but I'm not excited about voting yes. So I'm kind of tossed.
Okay, well, the only thing I can tell you, from what I understand, this is about guidelines and beginning to look at properties, be it commercial or residential, that are already taking foot with the center, the community center, the apartments that are going up, and to get guidelines so at least there's something out there to move forward in. It may come up that it is too much and too difficult and too controlled by thank you. And so it's trying to find a base at least to get started beyond what we already have.
Mayor, I'm wondering, have the two of you heard enough from this group to maybe if we vote yes, that you could come back with something that was
More concrete.
or
But it's an exploration of guidelines, really, in the area, which obviously is missing.
Correct, and Madam Mayor,
Beyond the
hearing from
church.
you, we can make sure to include, from what we heard today, as we go with the proposal, that those comments were heard, so that we further drive down, well, how does this work? Is the scope too large? Like, what are we specifically looking at delivering? In my mind, the back of my mind is something as simple and subtle as Jackson Avenue gets redeveloped, is it going to be unique to Jackson Avenue, or does it look identical to Main Street? And so there might be just something as simple as, what do the guidelines do that steer us into the little things that make it stay historic West Side versus, well, that looks like it could have been Water Street, Henderson, or somewhere Boulder City.
so if we vote for this today, this doesn't mean it's going to take place, because you still would have to come back with a contract or something.
Right.
Much
Well,
more work.
and two, I think Mike Howe here, having been involved with the 100 Plan and the form-based code, this is sort of a next step, and that it may not go further, but I think of ovation facilities for seniors. So if in fact, and I know I have spoken to that developer often, to do something in the historic West Side, but that he has a plan and a rubber stamp of what he generally does, but this guideline may make him think differently, and in line with Member Hilton's comment, out of this could come maybe some cost-attractive ways to move forward out of these guidelines. So developers want to come in and not get priced out of developing.
Mayor, I was wondering whether or not I'd like to be able to move forward with something, but without, I think there's some real concern, some real issues that are here. Can you address those issues and come back with an updated proposal for us? Is that possible, rather than simply us saying, go spend go get $100,000 contract and come back with that? Is there some way to narrow this down and come back with a different version of a proposal?
I'm for that. I'm for that.
Well, I think we're trying to
But
get
to respond to that, we serve at your discretion. I guess we're still at that initial stage, so we can always come back and get more precise.
This is Commissioner Mowbray. I'd be interested to see what the scope of the engagement is for the architectural firm, to see exactly how they define what they think their role is going to be in this project. And so I don't think this is really ready today for prime time.
And is it going to be?
What does that do, Dr. Seabrand?
Well, if the commission is not supportive of this proposal, then we couldn't obey it because it would come back as the same exact proposal. So we can withdraw it without prejudice and come back with a new proposal.
I can't accept that.
So you withdraw your...
I withdraw my motion based upon what our experts...
And if I could, Mr. Howe, I mean, knowing how much you've done in this area for this city and all this sequence of planning and the work we've been doing, if it is withdrawn, what does that do?
Well, we come forward with another proposal that goes into more detail with the scope. To be clear, that scope is preliminary because we're trying to take that first step of, is this general idea the right step, and then we would have another bite at the apple with the consultant to go in more detail of what precisely the design guidelines will
But then you're
entail.
getting more delineated in what you're trying to keep loose and larger, is what I'm hearing, but I may be wrong.
This is Commissioner Helton, if you don't
Please.
mind. I would be interested in seeing if you came back with something, because every time I see guidelines, it's like, oh my gosh, this will be more expensive. This is very, very low income area. We want great things to happen, but we don't want to scare people away. Can you make it revenue neutral?
So
Could you show us things like that in your next presentation of how it's not going to price anyone out of being able
Yes,
to do
we can
something?
show examples of guidelines and how they function and work. For the board today, I mean, since we haven't withdrawn it, it's basically, are you comfortable with the concept of design guidelines that basically provide a graphic response to what do you want future redevelopment in the West Side to look like? And we still have extra steps where we're not approving a contract, we're not approving someone to come in and then develop the design guidelines. So we're basically looking, with this amount of money, are we okay to go forward and then talk to a preservation and architectural firm to then propose in more detail how these design guidelines work?
And if I might, Member Helton, just for 1 minute, because Councilman Member Creer is not here, nor or have you had meetings in the historic West Side to see if there is the passion to move forward with this? I know the 100 plan, form-based code have been very well accepted, and things are really happening with what's happened with the Fifth Street School. So, I mean, there's a lot of attention there now with the garden, everything else. Anything, because I thought he was calling in, but what happened? With Councilman Creer and any meetings in the historic West Side?
So this proposal does include a number of neighborhood meetings and neighborhood engagement.
So that is part of what will occur?
That is part of this project, yes.
Okay. All right, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I had to find out, are the neighborhood and the neighbors included in that, and what Councilman Creer, was he advocating? Obviously, he was thrilled with the 100 plan and everything he's doing with the Legacy Park and everything else that's happening. So back to you.
Yeah, Your Honor,
Yes.
yeah. You know, I'm not comfortable voting for $100,000 today, but I don't want to kill the concept, the discussion. I mean, I guess if we can't do it under just to defer it because of open meeting law violations, but there's got to be some way we can keep this alive without voting on it today. I speak only for myself, but I'm not supporting $100,000 today.
Okay.
And if I may, Madam Mayor, to point to Senator Bryan, we're not approving $100,000 to anyone. We don't have KME and Chattel on contract. This is to give you the estimated cost, so we have an idea of when we come back with a consultant to go in more detail. We will be in that $100,000 window.
So that's your estimate of what it might be at the next stage. This is just asking us whether you should go ahead and continue to move forward with the concept of establishing guidelines.
Correct.
And at what point then, at what point does what happen that you will come back with a firm number to proceed after you speak to different groups of people or architects or whatever?
Well, and to that next step, if we were to obtain approval, would to have that conversation with Melvin Green, with KME and Robert Chattel, that these are the parameters, these are the boundaries of what we're working in, and then these are the concerns that we need to address, so that when we come to present to get an approval on going forward with design guidelines, you're more comfortable with what the end product is.
Mike, isn't there a way to define the area better than just that generic map?
Well, it's physically bound to the boundaries of the historic West Side District. So,
and that's something that's been approved by planning by the city
correct.
Council. That's finding.
That's an actual downtown master plan.
And so
district.
we can't
change
narrow within that.
Correct.
Well, because it doesn't make sense to have because those are different areas of the community. I mean, they different architectural areas of the community, different functions of society in different areas. How we're going to overlay a plan for all of West Side doesn't make sense.
But that's what he's asking for, the guidelines to establish those differences that exist in that area. So it's guidelines. We're not approving, he's giving, and correct me, because blabbermouth here, that the estimate could be costing at the next point up to $100,000. But at this point, we're just approving or saying continue on with these guidelines for these various areas within the restricted area of the historic West Side.
Mayor, we do have a motion.
Oh, we took it back.
No, what did you
Oh,
change?
you didn't take it back.
Well, originally I made a motion, Bob. I mean,
But
I'm
then
willing
when
to
they-
defer to somebody else to make a motion. What I would like to see us do is to defer this in some way, to give our good folks here that have been before us to make a new presentation taking into consideration the comments that have been made at this point. I don't know how we do that if there's an open meeting violation of that, but I must say I can't see an open meeting violation, but I'm going to rely on what the city attorney or the deputy tells us. Yeah.
Jeff Dorkek, Assistant City Attorney. To be honest with you, I'm a little confused about the relay from staff on what the item is. The way it's worded to me is you're asking the commission to approve $100,000, and you were going to go to this architecture firm and say, we have $100,000, put together the guidelines for us. Am I wrong on that?
So no, not entirely. So today's ask is that basically earmarking $100,000 for this project. If we have that $100,000 earmarked, then we go to the architect and the preservationist and say, put together this document for us. That document then comes back in front of this commission for approval. So it's a two-step process.
Right. So if they are to, Jeff Dorkek, Assistant City Attorney, if the commission were to vote today, you would be putting as Dr. Seabrand said, $100,000 would be earmarked.
Yes.
Bingo, period.
Just earmarked, not spent.
Correct.
But it's earmarked for this architecture firm. They can spend it. They're going to go ahead and put guidelines together, and the money's going to be spent for putting those guidelines together.
No, it has to have come to the contract has to be approved by this commission. They cannot create. So we get the approval for funding, and then we work with the city attorney's office and the contracts office after we've spoken to the architectural firm, and then that contract comes in front of this commission, and that is when they say this is the $100,000 they are approving.
Okay. So basically, it's a little wonky because, and that's not no offense to anyone, it's a little wonky because there's a contract still to come. This item was worded very specifically for essentially alerting the commission that we'd like to work with this architecture firm and we'd like to bring back a contract that would be worth up to $100,000 with
Correct.
them.
This is how we do all of the movie contracts, and this is
Gotcha.
what we base this off.
So, to Senator Bryan's point, I think as written, it can stay and be held in abeyance, and you can come back and provide more information, and basically the commission could say, well, yeah, we're fine with you approaching KME Architects, but we're not fine with the contract being $100,000. So let's flesh it out early, what you're going to, I mean, it's going to be difficult for you guys, but let's flesh out what we're going to talk to them about, and maybe we're going to cap it at, you could take an offer to them for $50,000. I don't know if that's going to work, though. You know what I'm saying?
Could I ask you, what I heard you say, and I think he caught it, you're asking to earmark and put on reserve $100,000, which you're not touching until we get another meeting back with your assessment of this is the contract. So it's like if we spent everything else in the coffers, $100,000 will be put aside in reserve for your guidelines.
Correct. And I guess, Jeff Dorkek, Assistant City Attorney, another way to look at this item today, right before you would be authorizing staff to enter exclusive negotiating with this architecture firm for a contract. And like Dr. Seabrand said, she will then come back with another item saying, okay, here's the contract and here's the details. If you're ready for her to go to that second step, you would approve today's item. If you're not ready for her to negotiate just with this firm, then we got to figure out what you want to do with today's item.
Okay, and I did hear that, I thought I heard some comment about why KME, maybe somebody else as well. So I think that fits with it also. So it is putting it on reserve. It's not that you're going to spend it, because you can't spend it till we approve the contract.
Correct, and if the commission does not approve the contract, then we don't get the $100,000. So
Correct.
of the $6.9 million that this commission has, just taking that $100,000 to say, this is what we would like to see this money spent on, if you approve the contract. You can always deny
And this
the
is not just about, this is not really about the money. It's actually what we are going to ask KME to do.
To these people.
Correct. That's where the confusion or the questions are here. That's been, the money is if we say it's up to 100,000, guess what? It's going to be 100,000. Like, we all get that. But it's what we're going to ask them to do that we need to have some more conversation with.
Yes.
Jeff Dornick, Assistant City Attorney, just to help out with Commissioner Stowell's point. So going off of your point, what I would say is then you have two options. You could hold today's item in abeyance, come back and give staff more direction on how they should negotiate with the architecture firm at the next meeting, or approve the item, council, and then staff comes back with a contract that you are then going to say, well, we read the contract, but we want this, this, and this added, and we're going to go back and forth.
Your Honor, I favor option one. Simply defer this matter, and the issues that have been discussed there can be discussed
And
at the
that's
next
your
meeting.
motion?
And I believe, without putting words in his mouth, he said we can do that legally without violating.
And that's your motion?
So I move
Okay,
that we
do
do
we
that.
have a second?
I'll second.
And, okay, all in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, that carries. Thank you. I'm, again,
Right, thank you.
Member Mowbray, that's Notre Dame for you.
Excuse me, and that will be to September 25th,
Okay.
which is the next meeting.
September 25th, next
Of the
meeting.
commission, yes.
Okay, let's move on to agenda item 11, 230357 CLC1, final report by Executive Director of the Commission for the Las Vegas Centennial regarding the completion of the documentary film, The City of Las Vegas, the 1950s, funded by the Commission for the Las Vegas Centennial. That's okay. You can only be in one place at a time. Okay,
Sorry,
you're on
Stephen,
11.
for the record, we're just trying to, our schedule for September changed because of some holidays, so the actual commission meeting date for September is September 26th. So just to
Okay.
clarify that last point.
Okay, thank you. September 26th will be our next meeting, 26th.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, now we're on to the 1950s, please.
And so this is just a quick recap of the most recent documentary, The City of Las Vegas. It was the 1950s. Premiered on May 13th over at the Beverly Theater, and it was very well received, and we just pulled up these numbers to show that these
Wow.
movies continue to be popular. The early years is now up to 6.5 million. The 20s, 1.2 million, the 30s, 983,000, and the 40s and 50s, just over 500,000. So the movies do continue to generate a lot of interest. We always get fantastic feedback, and our Channel 2 plays these quite often during the different holidays and on weekends. So, and any questions on that?
Just start off with the record, just two quick things. One is I get the same feedback all the time and watch these. But what is really interesting to me is 7.7 million views for the early years in the 20s. That says there's a real interest in our community and not Frank Sinatra and Bugsy Siegel.
Yeah.
That there's a real interest in the early history, which tends to not get covered. The railroad came, they built the dam, and Frank Sinatra and Bugsy came to town. That's been done 100 times, but this shows that there's a real interest in the early history of our community, so I think it's great.
And how are we continuing to market this, please?
Well, like I said, it is on our Channel 2 quite often. over the holidays, especially military-related holidays. They play the marathons. And our media team tweets about it as well.
Okay. And maybe just a comment or a running ribbon that maybe on 3/8/13, whatever, could, if you'd ask Mr. Riggleman, how can we get that these are available on, oh, but it has to be on the Vegas, Go Vegas app?
Yeah, I
Because
believe.
they may not have a channel too. Okay.
Right, yeah, they're also available on the different streaming platforms.
Okay. Wonderful. And this was a report only, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Any comments, questions, Member
This is
Helton?
Commissioner Helton for the record. I just was checking to see what the monetary return has been, because I know that the city gets a portion and we get a portion. Do we have a breakdown of that?
I'd have to look at our finance analyst for that. Kathy, did you hear that question?
And if it's not ready for this time because you didn't expect the question, we can take it up in our September meeting.
Yes, I can look into that.
Okay. Thank you. And this is a report only?
Correct.
So let's move on to item 12, 230205 CLC1, abeyance item, discussion for possible action regarding approval of a grant request for $135,000 by the Board of Regents Nevada System of Higher Education on behalf of the UNLV, University of Nevada, Las Vegas Public History, the costs associated with the creation of an app-based walking tour of historic sites in downtown Las Vegas, and authorizing the president to execute the grant agreement as approved by the city attorney, all wards.
I'd like to make a motion to withdraw without prejudice.
Okay.
Seabrand, for the record, yes. So the applicants, I have had several conversations with them over the last several months, and they did ask for this to be withdrawn without prejudice, and if they decide to re-look at this, that they would come back at a later date.
So that would come from the applicant is withdrawing without precedent. So all in favor of accepting that, please signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much. Motion carries. So we're on to 13, report by the Executive Director of the Commission for the Las Vegas Centennial regarding completed projects and announcements relative to the Commission for the Las Vegas Centennial.
Seabrand, for the record again, and this is, I just have one slide for this. Basically, every project is in progress. There is a question from the producers, Boyd Productions, on the 1960s. They're looking for an interview location for October 4th. If somebody has a property, I know Commissioner Prado was very generous last time to let us film at his property. So if anybody is interested in providing their house or property for an interview location, they do have to meet specific requirements for equipment and people and lighting and whatnot. But just email me and I'll put you in touch with them. That's it. Unless there are any questions.
Well, Member Coffin, do you want to respond to Dr. Seabrand?
You're looking for locations. Well, I know well, of course, I live downtown on 5th Place, and Member Mowbray lives, I don't know where you live now. John, sorry. You used to live on 15th. You still are on 15th? Oh, okay. Well, there's lots of places to be. I mean, you could use my house, but you were talking about a yard, maybe outside?
No, you're talking about a large inside location that's controlled environment and sound and so forth. I'm wondering, the place that we went over behind that art center near the off of.
Oh, that was an Airbnb that they were staying at.
No, over near the Washington and F Street. We were there with Commissioner Creer. We gave him a plaque. They had a couple of big, very large rooms.
Oh, you mean the Doyle, Mesquite Wood?
The Doyle, right.
Oh, yeah.
I was wondering whether that could be.
I don't know. I can suggest it to them.
Okay.
Excellent idea.
I can
Yes,
also tell you
Member?
the Morelli House is available, and we've used it. Netflix, we just did a Netflix documentary
Yeah, they've
there.
looked at that one before. It unfortunately doesn't work So, but
It
thank you
works
very
for
much for
other
that
things.
suggestion.
I think that's a good idea. Member Stoddles there, great. Okay, so we'll move on to agenda item 14, discussion regarding topics for future agenda items. Comments made during this portion of the agenda by individual members shall refer solely to proposals for future agenda items, and any discussion shall be limited to whether or not such proposed items are within the purview of the commission and/or whether such proposed items should be placed on a future agenda. No discussion regarding the substance of any such proposed topic shall occur, and no action shall be taken. Do we have anybody with an idea and a concept, please? Member Stoddle?
I'd like to, we've had several discussions this commission has over the last 3 or 4 months, 6 months, regarding updating the commission's strategic plan. And part of that plan was the development of ideas that the commission would not be passive and just sitting here waiting for grants to come forward, that we would look at specific targets in the 3 areas, which are the actual historic preservation of structures or objects, secondly, education, and out of the last strategic plan, we came up with the ideas that we would fund documentaries, and that's been very successful. And the third could be considered generically cultural, where it's things like murals or outside artwork that represented historic elements. But what I'd like to get on the agenda is the actual hiring of somebody that would help us move through this process. So that's what I would suggest we do.
Does it require a motion?
No, I think that we just give you a suggestion, and Dr. Sebring can put it on. So, and yes, Member Mowbray.
Yes, I'd like to propose a project. Recently, last week, Kirsch Miller, who was a shop foreman and service manager for Godden Ford, passed away. I worked under him as a mechanic at Godden Ford when they had their store at Las Vegas Boulevard in Charleston. Every time I drive down Stewart, I look over at the old City Hall garage, which was the original Godden Ford in 1922.
Wow.
1922. They blocked up the service entrance. I used to go there as a little boy with my dad. We'd get our Fords back from our dealerships in the Midwest. And after 90 days, you had to go tighten the bolts and everything. And that smell of that garage, it was embedded in me that I thought one time I might want to be a lifetime Ford garage mechanic, you know. But he passed, but I'm thinking about it, and they're still in business. They celebrated last year, their 100 years here in town. If we could think about a project to honor some businesses like Godden Motor Company as part of our heritage of the city.
Well, as you know, Archie Grant, he was one of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
One of our regents, ran for public office a number of times. Really quite a historical figure in his own right. Yeah.
And sold a car to Machine Gun Kelly, by the way, when he came through. But you know, the city of Las Vegas during the Centennial produced a booklet, a nice large booklet that listed the businesses that have been around for 100 years. So maybe there's some ideas within that.
Interesting, yeah.
Maybe we could have a plaque that uses our license plate.
Sorry, Commissioner Mowbray, I did not hear the building you're speaking of. What's the name
It's
of it?
down on Stewart and Main. It's right across from the old City Hall.
Yep.
Well, the new old City Hall, right? But I think the city used it for maybe a facilities repair place. It's painted gray, but you can see
Bonnie came to town.
You can see it where the entrance on Stewart, you used to pull in there, they had the bays. I'd be interested just to walk through there and see what's left, you know?
Wow.
Yeah, that was the original Godden Ford. Archie Grant, Mr. Grant owned that, and then Mr. Godden bought it, and it's been around since 1922.
That's right.
Well, and two, if you could research and find out from UNLV if they have a copy of that book which celebrated these different companies that were here 100 years ago. You have it?
I do, and I'll give it to, I think I gave a copy to Diane. It's
Diane, I'll take
It's a booklet, more of a magazine.
Of companies that were here 100 years
Or
ago.
have 100-year something.
Or at the 100-year Centennial, our Centennial celebration.
Diane, I'll take a picture of the building I'm talking about on the,
Great.
Great.
And then any other
It's on Stewart.
suggestions,
Stewart.
comments? The only one I'd like to add is, can we have some type of comment about what's happening with the Atomic Testing Museum? I know they wanted to come down and get into the heart of the city, and certainly so significant with our law enforcement mob museum, the Neon Museum, everything that's from that time. So maybe, and I know that
They've had to
Chris,
decide to stay where they are.
for 5 years, but they're leasing, there's no walk-up ability. So I just love to have that on a discussion item. I know that Chris Kempfer is on their board. I don't know who else. Is anybody on this? Are you on their board too? Oh, please, and so Member Stodahl, and anybody else on their board? Because I think it would really be significant if we could figure out a way to entice the federal government to help with this. So is anything else on 14? And so...
No, but I would like to have a question on something.
Yes, please.
If I could, because we were talking about certain things, ideas. I think everybody's aware of the Charleston Underpass. It's probably one of the oldest places left in town. And the bridge coming across is probably the oldest marking of it still, because I think it's the last one. And it is a horrible, terrible mess, and it's mixed in with the city, and it's mixed in with the UPR. And my point is this: I often envision somehow like a mural on each side of history, leading underneath from one point all the way to the other, so as you're going underneath the underpass and the top of the railroad part, some type of mural representing Las Vegas from the early days, I mean, all the way back down to nobody being here, and a mural on each side on that side going all the way through to where all of a sudden it just shows the city of Las Vegas on the mural. So it's coming from the Western days and bringing it forward on the end. And I think it would be a great place, like, for people to want to drive and see, but that is our driving point. That is the entrance point. That is Charleston Boulevard. You get off the freeway, that's it. That's your direction to downtown, and if you get off up on the upper part on Las Vegas Boulevard. And our city has left that underpass looking like a homeless area, and you can't even walk underneath the bridge. But I was just saying, is it possible to have an artist bring forth like an idea to paint history mural up on there?
Member
Or does it even
Prado,
make sense?
Just wanted to let you know it is part of the overall redesign, repair that's going on with NDOT, and a greater plan that our new city manager, Mike Jansen, can respond to. So to me, it was
It's
always...
the worst-looking place in the city of Las Vegas.
Former Councilman Coffin used to talk about that gas pipe that goes right over, under, right forever and ever, where the railroad passes over. So I will hook you up with new city manager, Mike Jansen, who can explain to you what the plan is there.
Oh, I would love to. I just envision something cool there where if people are looking, hey, I'm going to Old Town now.
Okay,
You know.
great.
As soon as you get underneath the bridge, Wholesome Bread, you're right there.
Boy, do we work well in this city. Look at this right on your monitor.
Yeah, from the railroad, yes.
Take a look at your monitor.
Look
Oh,
at
there
that.
it is.
Is that wonderful? Yay.
I think that, sorry, Superman, for the record, I believe this is from the Arts Commission meeting.
You know, the
What you're
side
seeing on the
ramp of the
screen.
concrete is what I'm talking about on each side.
Yeah.
There's your under,
I could picture
right
that,
there.
you know, desert
So that's fast response.
Wagon train.
Madam Mayor, if I may.
And then the railroad and then.
We were in the works, Councilman Knudsen and I, working with OCA, our Office of Cultural Affairs, I think this harkens back a year and a half or two, maybe, where we were trying to move the needle on getting a mural done to where coming one way is going to the arts district, heading another way is going to the medical district. But I think we had to receive the blessing of some federal entity or agency, and they didn't want us to advertise, and so it kind of squashed the concept. But if we want to look at it from a conservation lens and our history as a city, then maybe we'll get that blessing.
And I would ask you, Member Diaz, to make sure you check with Mike Jansen because of what NDOT and the whole process of fixing all of that for our BRT that's coming down in the area as well. So just to get the information, but good concept too. So anything else that we have here? We then are going to move into our second, our second and final citizen participation. Public comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters within the jurisdiction of the commission. No subject may be acted upon by the commission unless the subject is on the agenda and scheduled for action. If you wish to be heard, please come forward, give your name for the record, the amount of discussion on any single subject, as well as the amount of time any single speaker is allowed may be limited. Rushing to the microphone as always. Everyone, thank you for attending today. Thank you to our staff and to IT and anybody else that's been doing this. We are now adjourned. Good.
Is it too late?